Welcome to the Content Podcast, Conversations with Silicon Valley's Creatives. I'm Daniel Garcia, your host and the cultivator of Content Magazine, published by SV Creates. This episode of the Content Magazine podcast is brought to you by Bonfire, a Silicon Valley digital agency building elevated websites for ambitious brands. Find out more about Bonfire at bonfire.com.
Hello.
Today we talk with Donny Foley. He's an artist and the gallery manager at the Pacific Art League.
Hey, Donny, how you doing? This is Daniel.
Hi, Daniel. How are you?
I'm doing great. I usually don't like to tell the dirty secrets of production, but this is actually our second time because we had a technical difficulty. So I hope you stay there. Say something just so I can see if you're still there. Oh, actually.
No, I'm just kidding.
I was wondering. Good fake, man. Good fake. I got panicked. Donny keeps leaving. So, anyways, but as we were doing the kind of like the quick pre-discussion, I asked you to define yourself, and you kind of shocked me because you just mentioned. Well, how did you define yourself?
I'm the gallery manager at Pacific Art League,
which is cool and incredible, and I've always been excited that you've had that job now for how long you've been working there?
I've been there for a little over 3 years.
Yeah, which is great. I remember when you transitioned from Collide Gallery, being there, and then over to there, and I thought that was great. But I have to admit, I was a little surprised that you didn't mention artist or cartoonist in your.
I don't. Sorry. I haven't done a lot of art lately. Since a little bit before the pandemic, I kind of was like falling out of it, and then I was getting back into it. And in the beginning of the pandemic, like let's say the first half, I got back into my comics and and then I just kind of hit this point where I just couldn't do not anything, but I wasn't creating anymore. I wasn't even doing the resource website anymore. And I just kind of have a hard time saying I'm something that I'm not doing. And I know it's not true, but it's just kind of how I feel. So I figured people want to know more about my gallery stuff, about the gallery, than about me personally.
Well, actually, I want to know about you personally. I can read up on the Pacific Art League on the website. No, well, good. So, okay, that was interesting. I was wondering why, because that's an interesting philosophy, right? Because if you aren't necessarily creating and doing your cartoons and your comics and illustrations and drawing right now, then I could see why you would say that. But I know when I retired from photography during one spell of my life, I would still say that I was a photographer, but I'm just not doing it anymore. But I do want to talk about your art though, because that's the context that I originally met you in. And
that's true. I forgot about that.
Yes, I kept the it's a BCPAL. So you were doing cartoons and you had a character that you developed, Donbon.
Donbon, yeah.
And you had the whole Donbon Universe.
Good memory.
Yeah. So, and I really love the drawings that you were doing. And so let's talk about how did you get into kind of doing comics and how did you develop and get into that kind of like passion of drawing in comics?
So when I was a kid, I was like really into cartoons and, just like most kids. And there was a point in time when cartoons just got just really boring. They were like rated G. They went from like Looney Tunes and they were violent. And that sounds terrible, especially for a little kid. Like, I like violent cartoons. Yeah. But I mean, they were just funny. And then they became these really boring, and like you said earlier, educational. Yeah. And they were just not entertaining anymore. And I remember thinking, when I'm older, I want my own cartoon, and I'm going to, whatever this rule is, I'm going to break it. I'm going to make the cartoons I want to see, da-da-da-da-da-da. Yeah. And I was really into it, but I was also very lazy. So I didn't want to learn how to draw and all that stuff. So everything was stick figures. And, as a kid, your humor isn't really developed, and it's like going back and seeing those old things.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh, like these are
Like what? What
these are.
age is this? Would you say at this point?
This is probably when I was in I don't know, sometime in elementary school, maybe.
Okay.
Two things happened, and they were around the same time for me. I was going to school, and then we had like an assembly, and we had a cartoonist come in,
Oh, cool.
and he just came in, and you remember they had the overhead projector inside the
Right.
cafeteria,
Yeah.
and he was drawing cartoons really quickly, and I remember he drew this pointing hand, and it was so simple yet effective, and you knew what it was,
Yeah.
and I remember thinking like, oh, that's really cool. I want to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And then I also kind of that got me interested in the like cartooning thing, and then the cartoons at the same time started getting crappier, and then I really wanted to be a cartoonist,
Yeah.
and so I would make these comics and stuff, and they were stupid, they were like just over the top or whatever.
Yeah.
And then what killed it when I was in like middle school was like South Park came out,
Oh.
and then not only did they like break any kind of rule that there was, they decimated it, and
Yeah.
they changed the game. Um, and then I felt like, as a kid when you're that young, you're like, oh, my purpose to be a cartoonist has been ruined. What should I do now?
Yeah.
But I was still having a lot of fun. And then going into high school, I used to make these little cartoons for people or comics. And then I made a couple friends, and we would just kind of exchange things back and forth. And as I got older, I was like, this stick figure stuff is not going to cut it.
Yeah.
So then, but like I said earlier, I was very lazy. Instead of I'm going to take an art class and learn how to actually draw, I was like, I'm a cool artist. I'm going to figure it out myself. And so I feel like if I had taken those classes, my artistic career would be a lot different and good. But
Yeah, but you definitely, I mean, like you definitely had developed a style. I mean, the Donbon characters, and what's the cat? Bert? Is that the?
Bert,
Yeah.
my cat,
You had a
little
couple
Bert.
different cats, right? What?
Yeah, there's
Stacky, Stunky. Like,
Skunk-Truck.
yeah. So, right. I mean, it had a very distinct look.
It took a while to get there. Like, I should one of these days I should show you some of the original like Donbon designs. He was
Yeah.
I was very inspired by Jonan Vasquez, and he's the guy who did Invader Zim and Johnny the Homicidal Maniac.
Okay.
And when I was younger, I wanted my characters to look like his. They were very skinny and lanky, and
Hmm.
um, then I was like, well, I don't want it to be just like his. So they were kind of knockoff versions of his.
Huh.
And
Okay.
then through time, they became these like stumpy, short, cutesy looking characters.
Yeah. Well, even the
um,
Donbon, I mean, the hair on Donbon totally, I mean, obviously that's somewhat of a self projection. I mean, because you have the hair kind of up in the bouffant, or I don't know what you
I
call
wish I had that hair.
it. I don't think in the real world it could stay up like that.
They get amazing chemicals these days.
Right, that's true. Yeah. So, okay, so then you started to develop your own kind of like, they morphed as you went through time.
Yeah, like they also used to be. I held on to that idea of comics being very like violent for the longest time. I don't know why.
Hmm.
I think I used to be a psychopath in my last life, but but then I got to a point where I was wondering like I kind of like the cutesy kind of like darker with like a subtle dark kind of humor,
Yeah.
and not just like just the joke is right in front of your face. You kind of have to think about it.
Yeah.
I like the whole Pixar kind of take on things. Like it visually, kids will love it. Like a little kid can watch it and then totally enjoy it and not really get it.
Right.
And then adults can also enjoy it. And there's like a lot of like subtle jokes that they'd pick up.
Right.
And I really like that kind of humor.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it just kind of crosses a couple fields, I guess you call them.
Genres? No.
Genres. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's the thing. It's like I mean, when you were saying, I wouldn't have categorized what you're doing, and I guess I've seen it 10 years ago or whatever it was, but when I first came into what you're doing, and I would say it was a little. I always thought it was humor more than dark.
Yeah, well, a lot of when you and I first met, there was definitely funny.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely darker,
Mhm.
Like if you stripped it down, there was a lot of like just trying to think words that I can use that don't make me sound bad, and your viewers won't you won't lose viewers. Um, there was a lot of adult jokes in there.
Yeah.
Um, and they were the kind of things where I was like, do I want to look back on, like, would I show my parents this?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, just some of the jokes in there were just a little not something I was comfortable with.
Oh.
And then I kind of got to a point where I was like, well, if I'm not comfortable with it, then I'm probably not doing something right.
Hmm.
And then and then there was a transition, and actually you can't find my old comics anymore. I actually went through and I took them all down.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Self-censorship.
because I wanted to rebrand my Donbon character.
Yeah.
And it was like something I struggled with for years because I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it or not. Um, and in order for me to rebrand him, I had to kind of like get rid of like that old Donbon, because he was like this violent psychopath, and
Wow.
it was that's what he was.
A violent psychopath. Really, like, can you just give us a little? Because I don't remember seeing that stuff. So, what was some of the stuff that the violent psychopath Donbon would do? I mean, are we talking like murderous?
Yeah, like there
activity?
was a lot of like, I mean, the Donbon itself, like he himself wasn't doing a lot of necessarily bad things, but the comics, then they were. There were some things where like I remember I was working at this shop, and there was this guy. He was just so obnoxious, and he just always had something to say, and he had a way of getting under everybody's skin. And there was just one of these days where I had a comic due the next day, and I was just like, I came home from work, and I was just like, this guy's pissing me off. So I drew him, and I drew like him like over my shoulder, saying, "Oh, you can do this, and
Oh, yeah,
you can being him." And in the last panel, I ripped his arm off, and I shoved it through his head.
Oh.
And
Okay. Yeah.
And obviously it's funny, but I was like, looking back now, like now Donbon's this kind of dopey, kind of like kind of dim-witted guy,
Yeah.
and he's not violent. And so with that lingering out there, I was like, well, this kind of it's hard for me to go this direction with this out there.
Yeah.
And so
well, it actually so then I guess the earlier thing was kind of, it was a little bit of your alter ego than kind of expressing, would you say, some of your frustrations and angst? Because you seem like you're a very happy.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, I would never. Well, obviously, I would never rip anyone's arm off or shove it through their head,
Good.
even if I had the
Please
strength to
don't.
do it. But,
Yeah.
Now there's gonna be a wave of crimes of that happening, and people are gonna look to this interview.
Right. Exactly.
For my insight. But no, I'm not really. I'm not at all a violent person. I get angry, but I don't get like I'm not. I would never actually do anything harmful to other people.
Yeah.
It's not It's not in my nature.
Yeah.
But it was just when I do get angry, obviously I think of things that like would be funny in a comic, and that's how those things really came about.
Yeah.
Not like I'd ever really want something like that to happen to anyone or anything bad, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. I wouldn't even really say it was like an expression of things I wanted to do. It was more just kind of like, okay, well, it was more inspiring, really, which sounds terrible.
Inspiring.
It was inspired by terrible people.
Well, and then I would say like the second iteration of Donbon, I kind of felt Donbon was a little bit more of almost like the straight man to Bert and the rest of the universe. It seemed like he was kind of like the recipient of tragic badness in some ways.
Yeah, actually, I kind of get the idea from a comment my girlfriend made once a long time ago. Me and my buddy David, we made this he does music, and we made this really stupid song, and it was just really, really terrible. But it was like, it was mean though, like it was around that same time, and my girlfriend pointed out, I was like, well, what actually is kind of clever about this song is that you're not objectifying like any kind of person or race or anything like that. Like you guys are like the victims in this song, so it makes it kind of more less offensive. Obviously, she had a better way of saying it. She's a very eloquent person. I'm not. But she had a nice way of putting it, and I kind of thought like, well, if bad things happen to Donbon
Right.
and Bert, kind of was like both of them, more Donbon than Bert, but if things happen to them, I can do more with the universe rather than having them be this like, but being better than other people or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like comics, right? The comics do that kind of like self-abasement type of humor.
Yeah.
Rather than attacking other people, they kind of talk about and attack themselves. But then again, that becomes universal because we relate to that person and that emotion and stuff like that.
Isn't that how like all artists are? All the good ones.
Yeah.
They hate themselves rather than other people.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Wow. That's profound. We got to stop and think about that for a moment. Yeah. Okay. But then you got into this other thing that was incredible and word painting, right? I mean, so you would have your digital kind of like Donbon in the foreground and your characters. And then in the background, you would write, I mean, the background with the different colors, like you would do the sky and then you would write the letters, cursive, like penmanship or whatever you call it, like
cursive. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was cursive.
and then like where the cloud is, right? You would space it out. And that's a very tedious art form. It's like doing line art, but even at a different level because you're writing an actual story out. How did that come about? And, what was going on with that?
I was working at Collide Gallery at the time, and I was talking to Sherry, the like director, and we were talking about shows, and we wanted to do a self-portrait show. And at the time, I was getting real bored with what I was doing, not because I was like, oh, so good at it, but I was just kind of, I kept looking at it, and I was very unimpressed with what I was doing, and I wanted something new. And I've always been into like the whole storytelling thing. And I was wondering if there was a way to combine the two of telling a story and visually, and at the same time, I don't know how you say visually with words, but anyways, and then it just kind of clicked. I remember I was working at the gallery and I was just sitting, I had this piece of paper. And I was like, what if I just did words? I mean, at the same time, words are just lines. And a drawing is a series of lines. So there's got to be a way to do this. And so, I drew this Donbon portrait. And it was very rough. Like, if you look at it, I haven't done a word painting in a long time. Just because it's so much work.
Yeah, it is.
But if you look at the first one, and then you look at it towards some of the stuff I was doing later, oh, it's like night and day. You can actually read what the original one says for the most part.
Yeah.
And then I really refined my craft on that one, and I was able to write so small.
Yeah.
And I found little tricks going along the way.
Yeah. And then the stories were you writing the stories that were there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you could read them, you can't read them, but if you could, the whole thing tells a story about what you're seeing. So let's say if it was like a world falling apart and there was like a skunk and a fox and they were like separated, but it was a story about why they're separated. And then, it has the whole story in there, from beginning to end and everything in the middle. And I wrote down most of my ideas for all these stories with the idea that one day I was going to make a book with all of them.
Yeah.
But I don't know whatever happened to that.
Yeah, I remember like there was a couple they're all super cool. And then but there was two that I remember that had kind of like where the words were like trailing off. There was like scattered. Both of them were kind of like scattered dreams and scattered something of the words.
Like the words themselves were breaking, as if like the word world was falling apart.
Yeah. So it was making, like the separation in the background was then the words had started. And then one of them even like it was like falling off like the words were kind of like falling off a cliff. Like the letters were like trickling down.
That was one of the first ones I ever did too. I think it was the third one I did,
Wow.
and I liked it for a couple reasons. It was a really cool effect, and it was less work. Um,
Because you had to do
but
less letters there, right? Yeah.
you have no idea how much pain that causes my arm, my hand writing those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
But a lot of people really resonated with that, and I kind of thought that people would see it as like a lazy thing or something like that.
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
but people really kind of they saw a lot. They saw what they wanted to see in it, and it was incredible to hear what they saw in it.
Yeah.
And that's actually kind of why I like art. It's just the way people interpret it.
Hmm.
It's so different.
Yeah.
And you can even tell them what you're seeing, and then oh, that's not what I see. I see this.
Or
And
they'll completely buy it. Say, "Oh yeah, 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 that's what I see."
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell them whatever they want to hear. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Cool.
But no, it was like just it was a really cool effect, and it kind of opened the my mind to what else you could do with it.
Yeah.
I did one. It was a gift for someone where it was chunks of this word sky like falling, but it was also it was kind of hard to explain. But as like how in that picture the words were falling,
Yeah.
it was the same concept, but it was in chunks and words. It was a really cool
Hmm.
thing. I actually really enjoyed doing it.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah,
That's cool.
I should get back into those.
Yeah. That's cool. That was fun stuff.
So many markers.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And carpal tunnel.
Yeah, and that's not
Maybe that's Donbon 3, phase 3, because you had evil. You had
yeah.
evil. What did you use? Evil psychopath. Then you had,
Psychopath
and
Donbon,
then you
yeah.
had the self abasement receiving, and then you had the word writing, word painting,
Word paintings,
and
yeah.
then next will be who knows what the Donbon universe will
Crippled,
bring.
decrepit.
So hey,
Actually, what I actually want to get into, I actually I haven't done comics in a while. Like I said, I kind of like it's something I don't know, but something mentally happened. I don't want to say I broke because like anyways,
yeah,
but actually my goal with this whole the cartoon stuff was to actually do animation and get
oh
my own cartoon one day. Like that's still my dream, and I
yeah,
will eventually get there. And
yeah,
I think that's my 5-year goal. We'll say that.
okay.
Now that it's out in the universe, I kind of have to do it. So
Yeah, good, good. I'll call you back in 5 years. Hopefully, I'll see you before then. But
I'll
then,
have to
so
change
then,
my
okay.
logo.
So then, let's talk about that. I mean, like to be an artist, to seek out to be, uh, a comic or doing cartoons, or I always get confused. Why don't you clarify for us the difference between a cartoon and a comic? A comic is a strip, a series, and a.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the actual definition.
Hmm,
I know the way I view it is probably the way you do. A cartoon is an animation, and a comic is a still panels
okay.
on whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sure real cartoonists and real comic illustrators or whatever will be like, "What that douchebag? That's not what a comic is."
Right, I know. I could even
Oh.
feel like when I was saying, I was like, I know there's going to be people out there say, well, actually, a comic is this and a cartoon is, and I feel like there's sometimes some people are offended, like, right? If
Yeah,
someone's doing comics and you say, oh, I love your cartoons, they freak. But okay, well, let's put that all beside us now because that's not what we're trying to do.
you're
But
losing viewership.
yeah, but so then seeking, and looking and doing art, right? Here in Silicon Valley, and then you were working at Collide, and you were doing others. You even had a secondhand store, clothing store, right? Weren't you working there
Yeah.
for a while? And you're doing some other things, and now you're at the Pacific Art League for the last 3 years. I mean, what is it? What is it like to do art here in Silicon Valley?
I honestly don't know if it's different from anywhere else, just because I haven't done it anywhere else. Like I'm
Yeah,
not like a muralist, so I don't go
yeah,
and see what it's like. And even Sacramento, I mean, I can just kind of secondhand my information.
sure.
Like I know working in San Francisco, not San Francisco, I'm sorry, Sacramento apparently has got a decent up. I don't know if it still is, but up and coming like art scene, and it's
Hmm.
pretty good. Like the city is very receptive
Hmm.
for arts. Um, from my experience here, it's very mixed bag. But a lot of like for me personally, my art's received very well, but it also comes from uh, because the feedback I get is usually because I'm the gallery manager at a place where I would hear information, so most people aren't going to say, "Oh, yeah, I really hate your stuff. No, it doesn't resonate with me." Yeah,
Right.
they just don't say anything.
Right.
So I've always felt like some of the feedback I get isn't necessarily honest. But for artists in general in the Bay Area, I will say you have to put in the work.
Yeah.
And a lot of artists, especially kind of ones starting out,
Yeah.
one of the worst things you can do is just wait to be discovered,
Oh,
because
yeah.
it doesn't happen.
Right.
It will almost never happen. And a lot of them feel like, oh, I'm a show in this gallery, and
Yeah.
people are going to see my work, and I'm going to get these deals, and things are going to work out. This is going to be awesome. This is the beginning of my art career.
Yeah.
And you go to their social media or their website or whatever, and they don't promote that they're in the show, or they just put one little blurb and that was it. And
Yeah.
you really got to like put your nose to the grindstone and just do all that dirty work you don't want to do, the stuff you hate doing.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that really does it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's like that in other areas, but definitely in the Bay Area, like you can't rely on the galleries, the city, or really anyone to help you out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
my take on the Bay Area art scene.
Yeah. Well, and I think that you would have a very good connection to that. I mean, having to working at Collide, which is like the San Jose kind of like community gallery, and then now working at the Pacific Art League, which again is another community gallery, but I think it maybe at a little, because there's
It's
a
a
lot of,
different version, but
yeah.
it is still a community gallery.
Yeah.
I actually prefer to work in a community gallery settings because a lot of those artists are still like hungry for like art shows and art and to create, and they're not jaded by like, oh, I've done 50 shows this year. This is just another one. Like they're
Right.
very, a lot of them it's the first time and they're so excited, and
Yeah.
and you can read that in the art. Like it has a lot of just energy to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just it's very refreshing to work in a setting like that versus somewhere where you got to be quiet, like in a museum. I have never worked in a museum, so
Yeah.
I'm sure someone at a museum was going to be like, well, that's not how it is, or what?
Yeah.
How is he going to talk about something he doesn't know? But it just seems quiet and boring and just not really my pace.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm always amazed that's kind of a good point. I'm always amazed at like even when I go to, galleries and museums and stuff like that with my family, and we walk in and then there's just like this sense of like, oh, it's like a library, don't talk. Right.
Yeah.
And so then I kind of like taking the approach is, no one's ever said that's the way it has to be. So I'm like, carrying on talking, and my wife and kids are like freaking out. Well, actually it was Kathy Kimball, who used to be the CEO at the ICA. She was the one who was like, had told me one time, it's like, yeah, no, it's like a community space. Like you're supposed to come in and interact and be alive. And she thought it was like a tragedy that you would come into a, thing and you just stand there with your hands behind your back and you ponder, It's supposed to be about engagement and communicating and stuff. But okay, so now you're at the Pacific Art League and you've been there for 3 years. How are you liking that? Like, how's that filling the soul of Donny?
I enjoy it. Like I said, I meet a lot of new artists, and they're very excited to be there. And it's different than Collide. There's definitely those who don't know about Collide. Collide is a gallery in San Jose, and what they do is they offer wall space. It's like I think it's 4x6, 4x8, 7, something like that, 4 by something wall space, and then it's theirs to do whatever they want with. They can paint a mural. They can hang 2 pieces. They can hang 50 million small ones. Like it's a really cool concept.
Yeah.
And they had something like 80 to 90 artists or something. And you meet the artist, and that's a really cool thing to be able to like. When you look at these walls, you're kind of taking a step into this artist's head.
Yeah.
And to actually meet the artist, you always kind of wonder. I wonder what Gary looks like. Gary's work is real weird. I bet you anything he's like. Something's wrong with Gary. And then he comes in, he's just like a normal guy. And I'm like, whoa, that's not the Gary I thought. But so it was a really cool concept. And then at Palo, it's a lot different. It's just like a traditional gallery setting. It's more of a school with a gallery.
Yeah.
But I still get, to meet the artists. and it's a really cool thing. I really do enjoy it.
Yeah.
During installation or even during the art drop off, I get to meet the artist and talk to them for a little bit, and then they'll come back, and that's usually when I want to see them because they can point. They'll go and find their work, and they're like very excited to see it on a wall because they've seen it on a canvas for the past few months or leaning up against the couch or something,
Right.
or
Yeah.
hidden somewhere. And to see it on a wall is an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Like it just really it justifies the work that they've done, and
Mhm.
it's like it's like I guess I can't really top the word justify it, but
No, yeah, but yeah,
but
it's like it's an accomplishment or
yes,
yeah, that this thing you've labored over now other people can view and hopefully enjoy.
yeah, exactly. And they're usually like very appreciative of it, and they're so excited. They come back with their friends and their loved ones or whatever, and you see them taking pictures. And I always love during the receptions if we have like a group show.
Yeah.
There's usually a couple people just standing around a wall, and for I know why they're there, but it always looks kind of funny because there's like just this random person standing by this wall because it's their art
Right.
and they want to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's always kind of fun to kind of like eavesdrop into those conversations,
Yeah.
and just kind of see what they're telling him, either whether it's about the painting, about the process of it,
Yeah.
what it means, or blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's cool because
yeah.
it is that's the strange thing. I mean, I think anything that you create and you produce and you make, it's a part of you, you know? And so when you
Hmm.
take something and it's vulnerable, to take something and put it out there and then have people walking by with their wine going like, "Oh, I don't really like that one." you know?
Yeah.
That doesn't speak to me like you were saying earlier, it's kind of interesting. Um,
It's actually the curse of being the gallery manager is you hear these wonderful things about art. People will tell me, "Oh, Daniel Garcia did this great photography thing, and I really love it. He's my favorite." And blah 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 blah.
and
I'm
someone
loving
else.
this portrait thing, and I mean, no one's ever said it about you, but but they'll tell me these things, and I can take it all in, and that's amazing. But unless I see the artist soon after, I'm not
Yeah.
going to remember. Oh, I just met this random lady.
Yeah.
And the other side of it is the same person who just like
Yeah.
thinks they're God's gift, and they're just like, oh yeah, there's
Yeah.
this photography. The way he shot this portrait is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like he
Yeah.
really should have followed the golden ratio on this one.
Yeah.
Like it's like, come on, man.
Yeah. It is crazy. Uh, so then what's your role there at the Pacific Art League?
I'm still the gallery manager.
Okay. So what does that
But
mean?
it's so I put together anything kind of gallery related. I do. It kind of is what it sounds like.
So
But
what you're saying is like you manage the gallery.
yeah, so there's so all the shows that go through there, like I get to like decide what shows we're gonna have. Obviously, it's not just me.
Yeah.
Like I can say, oh, I want to have Shannon Amadon have a show, and
Yeah.
then they'll be like, oh, no, actually, she showed here 2 years ago, so let's pick someone else. Like
Yeah.
I still have to answer to my boss, who answers to a board, so there's still like you know a line I have to go through. But
So then
for the most part,
you're part of the curatory team.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But for the most part, everyone kind of they trust me, so they're just kind of like, I trust you to have a good show. If you think that'll work, I trust it's going to work.
Yeah.
And we had before the pandemic, we went from 7 employees, now we're down to 2,
Yeah.
and so now it's even more. Okay, well, the gallery's yours. Do what you want.
Yeah.
And I do more. So I help a lot in education. I do a lot of back end stuff. But we joke around at work that I need a new title because I do more back end stuff than I do actually gallery. But
But the
it's
back
like
end
one of those
manager doesn't
conversations.
sound very exciting.
Exactly. Gallery manager looks a lot better than everything else that other people don't want to do.
Yeah. 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 That's cool. And now, so it's 100 years that
Yeah,
the
this was
Pacific.
our 100th year.
Yeah. That's crazy.
It's insane. I feel very lucky to just get the job. 3 on the, what was it, the 97th year. And I was like, well, if I stick it out, I can make it to 100 years, and that'd be kind of cool. Let's
Yeah.
see what that is. I can say I was the gallery manager for the 100th year, and
Yeah.
that would probably look pretty good on a resume,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it was actually, I don't know if you had a chance to make it out there.
Not to the 100th show. I saw the opening photos and I was like, dang it, I wish I could have gone.
No, I mean,
It's still up though, right?
It's still up. It's to the end of January.
Okay.
So you've got time. I definitely suggest you see it. It's insane. There's something like 500 and something pieces in the show.
Wow.
Normally for a show, our anniversary show, we usually do between 100 and 120. And I was talking to someone. I was saying, like, I've always wanted to do a floor to ceiling show. You know, if I can get 400 pieces, I can make a floor to ceiling show.
Yeah.
And I was like very ambitious about this idea.
Yeah.
And you know, so we were like, okay, you want to do it? You can do it. And I was like, cool. And so we put it out there, and it started off pretty well. You know, we got a few submissions a little sooner than we normally do. And I'm like, all right, cool. Actually, it looks like we're going to definitely hit our goal of like getting it like over that 100 mark. And then, but I was like, you know what? I'd be happy if we got 200.
Yeah.
But I want 4. And then about a week before we got to that 400 mark, I was like, I really want to close the submissions, but we just talked about extending it. I was like, oh man. And then when it finally closed, it was like 500 and something. I forget what the actual number was, but I was like, oh my gosh, like
that's cool.
The gallery doesn't hold 500 pieces. I was telling people too, it was like, yeah, there's no size limit. Bring it. How big you want it? Just bring it. No, I need to fill space.
People backing up truckloads, and
I was actually trying to remember who I told that to. I was like, if it's someone I really know, maybe I can convince them to bring in smaller work instead. But I couldn't remember who I said it to. I just said it to a lot of people.
So then, is there now? Does the Pacific Art Gallery have like their own collection? So some of the pieces are owned by the Art League, or this is all submitted works, or
it's all submitted works.
Okay. And what's like either the oldest created piece or a piece by the oldest person? You know what I mean? Like, since it's got 100 years, you know, is there anything that was in the first show that's there now, or anything like that?
No, actually, most of it's probably from the past. I mean, I don't really know. We didn't require dates on the pieces. A lot of times we'll ask for the year it was created.
Yeah.
And this time I didn't.
Yeah.
I did that for a reason. But what we originally had planned for, because of my idea of like, I want to do a floor to ceiling show, and it ruined a lot of other plans that we were making.
It changed the priorities.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the ruin of other people's dreams.
Yeah.
We were going to make we have what's called the Central Gallery, and it's like the hallway.
Yeah.
And we were going to make that into a historical thing. And we had like newspaper clippings from 100 years ago. We found the original board minutes.
Oh,
from
wow.
the very first board minutes. You know, it's saying like, on this date we created, we 8 to 10 or whatever people sat down and had created. It was actually at the time called Pacific Arts. Was it Pacific Art? No, Palo Alto Art Club.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And it was like just about that. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. Put it in like a little glass display case. And someone went and found these articles and these like cool like these like drawings that were just in this random like folder, and they made copies of them. And I was like, oh, this is gonna be super cool. And then everyone did all this hard work, and then I undid it all.
Because you changed the priorities. Yeah,
exactly. Because I'm a jerk.
The Donbon is coming out in real life.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have the outlet now, so.
Yeah, I was just wearing a T-shirt with like those drawings, so people knew.
Right, exactly. You see your arm? It could be
like your arms.
Yeah. Do you like your skull? Cool. Hey, I want to quote something to you, and then I want you to kind of give me what that means. Okay. I haven't done this with anybody before, so this is a new feature. I should do it all the time. So, in the world of ugly, Donbon is king.
part of the rebranding, and I actually liked it, so I never changed it.
I like it too. Yeah. What was
But
your thinking behind that? What was going on?
at the time, everything was like, I was going through this. Donbon was this kind of like, it, it, he was supposed to be this kind of. He wasn't really ugly, but he just was like ugly on the inside.
Sure.
And that's why he was like so mean and did all these terrible things or whatever.
Yeah.
But it just sounded funny at the time. And I still like that quote. I actually very much enjoy. I know you got it too, and I see it all the time. I was like, I should change that because it does not go with my branding or anything. But I kind of like
Yeah, it's
it.
fun. It's a little mysterious, and then I think when you look through the stuff, you realize like, oh, it's not ugly in the physical sense. It's like the internal ugliness that's there, probably in all of us,
Yeah,
right?
there's a lot of ugly in the world. You can find it if you look. There's always ugly somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. You don't have to look very far.
Hey,
Just a
I'm
mirror.
just kidding.
Yeah, cool. Um, so, anything else you
I'm
wanted to
kidding.
add on that quote?
No, you kind of caught me off guard with that.
Okay. Well, how about this then? What is it? What is it like your philosophy of life? Like, how do you approach life in your existence? What kind of when keeps you going, or a phrase that you quote, or
I,
something?
I,
Yeah.
I actually, it sounds very trite, but I actually enjoy helping people.
Cool.
And I know a lot of people actually say that, and
Yeah.
because it's a good thing to say. Um, but I actually do enjoy it, and even
Mm,
I even try to do that through my comics, even though they're not necessarily helping people. But what hope people take away with it is in that moment they're not where they are. If they're in a bad place,
mm,
they can read a comic, whether it's mine or anyone's,
yeah.
and they're in that world just for that minute or two it takes them to get through it.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of a way to just pull away and whether yeah, and so that's kind of
Yeah.
what I try to do with my things. I like to believe that if I'm doing something, it's benefiting someone,
Yeah.
and not some like corporate d bag. Someone actually like who deserves help. Um,
Yeah.
Even with like the my art resources that Shannon and I are doing,
Yeah.
um, like that's a great example of like us trying to help people
Yeah.
and not getting anything in return. Not like getting like, oh, woe was us, but we're not asking for money. We're not
Yeah.
asking for this. Like it was like, here's something to help people. Help yourselves now. Go.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
that kind of
Well, we need to talk about that. So, my arts resource, you and Shannon and
Amazon.
Amadon, Amidon, um, started a while ago, basically a website of resources for artists, and you've been doing that for, man, how long has it actually been going for? 6, 7?
It's something like that. I looked it up the other day and I was like, this is what, been like 2 or 3 years? And I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
I've been doing this a long time.
yeah.
Uh,
And that's something that you
but
guys kind of have done to help local artists, right? To give them resources where to go experience art, go to feature artists, go to find education and art supplies and galleries, and right?
yeah, I mean, it was really to kind of just help artists who wanted more. Like when a new artist to come in this area, uh, it's difficult knowing where to get started.
Yeah,
And I'm not saying our resource site tells them where to get started, but it was a great jumping off point. Like
yeah,
there are just resources for everything there. It's a great website. I'm not trying to toot our own horn there, but
yeah,
it's very beneficial to artists. And it was just kind of like we'd both been in the scene for so long,
yeah,
and people gave us information because they know us, they trust us, they like us. But it was kind of impressive when someone would come in and say, like, they'd ask a question, and then someone just would hold back information that they had
hmm,
because they didn't want to compete for it in the future.
hmm.
And I was like, that's very I don't say artistic because I feel like it's a very artistic thing to do, but it just kind of
It's not a very
it
nice
just
thing.
yeah, it just honestly, it's you're making the art scene a better place by helping someone else get into it.
Yeah, yeah,
And it was just kind of, so after seeing that, we were just kind of like, let's let's do this. Like Shannon had always wanted to do it. The idea actually came from when they did that Knight's Grant Foundation thing.
Mm-hmm.
They put a challenge out for like someone to create something for them to fund. And then Shannon came up with this idea, and I was like, let's do it. And obviously we didn't get the funding, but we kept doing it.
Yeah.
It was just, it felt like an important thing to do. And we got a lot of people, who just really, really enjoyed the site. And, they sent us letters, these really nice letters saying like, oh, I just want to thank you. I read your blog and on, blah, 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 blah. I found it incredibly informative. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to make this.
Yeah.
And it's nice because he didn't have to do, or she didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
So it is neat. Unfortunately, right now the site is down because I'm just I switched it over to something else, to a different hosting, and I had to redo the whole site.
Yeah, that's always the trouble. Yeah.
But
I think it was great because it was two artists. I mean, you and Shannon, and especially with you working at the gallery, Shannon, who'd been involved in the art scene for a long time, and then the two of you kind of coming together really to help the art community and being artists. I think that it brought a great perspective. So I do hope the site gets back up soon.
It'll be back up. We're even it gave us an opportunity by having to rebuild it. It gives us an opportunity to do things a little different, which is actually kind of nice.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to finally getting that back up and running.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Is the old one still available, or it's actually, if you go to the URL, it's...
No, it's just one of those, hey, under construction.
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah, man, it's
people love that.
It's crazy. Like for the magazine, I don't know how many different times I've had to change over. I mean, back when I first started, I did in this weird kind of, what was it called? It was called Joomla or something like that. I don't even know. It was like this one type of, and then we changed it to WordPress, but then we had to change that WordPress to a different WordPress, and then now we got this other one, and it's just like. So there's like even links out there that people are like, what happened to my story? But it's like, oh my gosh. That's why when it's in print, right? It's forever.
Yeah. It doesn't go out of style. You don't have to update that.
Right, exactly. You just have to dust it off. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I know that's where I'm leaving WordPress and I'm going to Squarespace.
Yeah.
And it's this. I was really hoping because it was like, oh, import your old or WordPress site. And I was like, oh, cool. Yeah. And I did it, and I was like, that's not a website. That's got to be redone.
Yeah, right. Because all the images and all the it's such a nightmare. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing that. Well, hey, and this, like what you said, for, kind of like the way that you want to live your life, of like to help others. I mean, I don't think that there's any other. I think so many people say that because I think you start to realize that there's really no other way to live. I mean, there really is.
Yeah, I mean, everyone can do something, and it's so much easier not to do something, and it just, you kind of look back and you see the people around you and how they live and the things that they do and how happy they seem doing those things.
Yeah.
And you look back at yourself. I mean, if you're happy and you're not helping people, that's fine.
I don't think those people exist, really, though.
I don't know. I know we've met a lot of people, Daniel. You're just being nice.
No, actually, I would say the people who don't see themselves eventually get to that point, are seeing themselves serving other people somehow. They're not very happy people.
No, they are. They're usually the bitter ones.
Yeah. And I wouldn't even say it's conscious,
Oh yeah, no, definitely. It was a slow thing that kind of manifests over time, and seeing that it makes you really kind of like not want to be that.
Yeah.
If you can see it. A lot of people just really can't, and I'm not faulting them.
Yeah.
But I personally can see myself going that path, and I don't want to. So, I purposely make these changes so I don't end up in those places.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, my little motto, I brought it all down. I've thought about it a lot, and my kind of thing is to live is to give. Like, to me, that was like, that's what it's all about.
Great.
It's like, it's not complicated. So, and then that's the cool thing is like, no matter what you're doing, like if you work in a restaurant, if you talk to chefs, and the reason that they're a chef is because they love
helping people enjoy a movie, like, they're serving, right? And then
Yeah.
when you meet people who are carpenters and they're like, yeah, I just really enjoy using my skill to help someone have a home or a building, you know what I mean? And then you see artists, it's like, yeah, I'm helping people deal, with their internal struggle, or I'm giving voice to this perspective. And you're like, yeah, that's what it all comes down to. So.
Yeah, I like it. It rhymes. I love rhymes.
It rhymes. It's the most important thing in life.
Well, it's obviously I'm joking, but
No,
I feel like that you do live that motto. Just with your magazines is proof positive of that.
I hope so.
You've been how long has content been around?
Well, we're going on our 10th year, not quite 100, but 1/10 of 100. Yeah,
1/10 of 100. That's still a long time.
yeah.
But you were doing it. How long you been with SV?
SV
SV
Creates.
Creates.
2015 is when I merged with them. So it's a long time.
It's only been 10 years, really? For some reason, I thought you were on like
magazine?
15 going on 20.
No, oh my gosh, no.
Sorry.
Making me feel old.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
But 10 years, that's a long time.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of stories about other people.
Yeah. It's
and
fun.
not you.
Yeah. It's fun. It's fun. It's awesome. It's over easy. What's been in the print is roughly about over 800 people.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
And then what we've done,
nuts,
kind of like a blog and all that other kind of stuff. So it's pretty cool. I'm excited about it. But yeah. Anyways, cool. Well, Donny, it was great talking to you. It's fun hearing your journey of Donbon 1, Donbon 2. Maybe there'll be Donbon 3 out there someday. And
let's just hope I nail it at 2.
And thank you for serving the arts community with you and Shannon with My Arts Resource, and then also at the gallery at Pacific Art League too. I don't know. Do you want to make a final plug for the Pacific Art League? Of any sort, 100-year, come to the show. Got till January.
Yeah. The 100th year anniversary. It's an incredible. It's an incredible show. There's 200 and something artists in there, and they're amazing. The show itself is a work of art.
Yeah.
And it's up until January 24th.
Yeah.
So you got some time.
What do you guys open? What kind of hours are you open to walk in there to take a look?
So we've actually just re-entered the building, and it's just the two of us. So we don't have a set of hours now. We're actually posting them in our exhibition page on our website. Mm-hmm. In the next week or so, we'll have a solid. Sorry, normally I'd say it, but by the time people hear this, it might be different. Sure. So I don't want to say anything.
Check
just
the
yet,
website and the Instagrams for all the latest hours and stuff like that. I guess it was just actually, the two. Yeah.
We actually had Allie Allie's the director. She had someone come in today, actually, and photograph the whole show.
Cool.
And they're actually going to turn into it's going to be like a Google Street Maps, where you can click and it'll take you over here and you can go into the next room and zoom in on a painting. So the actual virtual tour is supposed to be up in the next couple of days. Awesome. And that's also going to be really amazing. So if you can't make it out, or if you're just kind of like, I don't know if I want to drive to Palo Alto to see a show, check out the virtual tour. And if you like what you see, come in and actually see it in person, because it will take your breath away. It's really an incredible show.
Yeah, I definitely want to get there. I've got some plans to go up to Palo Alto. So I know it's not that far, but I don't know. Sometimes
10 minutes away is too far sometimes.
I know. I'm just like a homeboy. You know what I mean? I just like hanging down downtown on my bike. But cool. Well, thank you, Donny. I will check the hours, and then so that's safe to assume if they're open, then you might be there.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, well, that's good. I'm going to look for the hours. And then if I do come by, I'll check, because I'd love to see you again.
You can just text me. You have my number.
Yeah. Cool. Well, all right, Donny. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Daniel.
And look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
All right, bye.
To see Donny's work, go to his Instagram, Ugly Donbon, and also check out the Pacific Art League on their Instagram at Pacific Art League. Thank you for listening to the Content Magazine podcast. Follow us on social media at Content Mag. Visit our website to become a member and help us to continue to tell the stories of the local creatives. This episode's music is 408 by Jack Pavlina. Find out more about Jack on his Instagram at Jack Pavlina Music.